We're back. Like we did, our conversation tonight is focusing on real estate, particularly on the subject of commercial real estate. And my guest tonight is Christopher Jannou, who is a hotelier. He is a real estate developer and author of The Internationalist. That's available on Amazon. Welcome to Business Review.
Thank you for having me, Suwi.
Thank you. The first question I have for you, CJ, in terms of commercial real estate. For most people, the thing that they believe drives commercial real estate is that you need to have a lot of money. Do you believe in that belief that you cannot embark on to commercial real estate if you do not have like these huge finances?
Right, a huge bank account. So a huge bank account helps, but that also helps going to the grocery store. You know, the truth is that one of the distinctions between commercial and residential real estate is that commercial is really all about the deal, right? Residential real estate is more aspirational. You know, people want that house, and commercial real estate is more about like, does it make commercial sense? Is there a good business case? Can you achieve your investment hurdles? And one of the really interesting things about commercial real estate is if you have a good deal, then you can syndicate quite easily. You know, like if, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say you don't have any money per se, but maybe you control a piece of land, and maybe you haven't even bought it. Maybe you did a ground lease, or maybe you optioned it, and you're able to find a commercial tenant that wants to take this piece of land, and the commercial tenant is viable. You can put a deal together around that. And so I've seen many instances in Zambia, for instance, where we have worked with a facilitator or a landowner or somebody who didn't own the land but optioned the land, and we were able to fit them in the deal because ultimately the deal made sense for us. Now, when you think about residential real estate, you know that if you go to the bank and you find the house of your dreams and you want to buy that, they're gonna look at all your bank accounts, your credit reports. They'll require a certain amount of money, a certain amount of cash as a down payment. The terms will be hard, and I find, in a funny way, commercial real estate easier because if the deal's good, the deal's good, which is different than residential. Residential is completely different. That's more about like, does the bank believe you're a good credit risk?
You've been in Zambia for quite some time. From your experience in dealing with commercial real estate as a developer, what are some of the key challenges that are faced in the industry?
There's been, one of the things that's happened in Lusaka, is that there has been too much penetration in certain areas. For instance, I heard a crazy number in terms of how much office space was available, and there was a high vacancy rate, and then they've over penetrated in terms of like the large malls, right? And what I found is that a lot of sort of developers who are maybe not that experienced in all facets of real estate, or maybe they're just neophytes, and they want to get into commercial real estate, they tend to go for office because it seems simple, But there, as I mentioned earlier, are a lot of asset classes within commercial real estate, and a lot of these classes are quite cyclical. And so, we came to Zambia to get involved in we wanted to build a Pan-African lifestyle hotel brand. That's what we came here for. But obviously, over the last couple of years, that cycle has been really stressed, and so, a classic, well-rounded developer would look at that situation and say, okay, so, hospitality's on a down cycle. Maybe there's too much penetration in office. Big malls are kind of out. What are the opportunities in commercial real estate? And there always are opportunities, right? Some of the ones I could even mention right now is like retail centers. Instead of malls, convenience centers, right? And maybe they're not in the primary cities, maybe they're in secondary cities or tertiary cities, places where there's less competition, and a lot of the big developers, especially the South African guys, don't want to go there. There are other asset classes like, I know that there's a big push for dry ports or strategic storage or logistics hubs, as Africa, as one of the fastest growing places on the planet, is sort of an emerging market for a lot of the big box stores and stuff, and they need the infrastructure to expand into this market. And so there are always opportunities in commercial real estate. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who owns a large cemetery, and that's commercial real estate, and one wouldn't think of a cemetery as like, a real estate play, but almost like self-storage, it's pound for pound, kwacha per square meter, it's probably overperforming the market, but these are it's kind of a little niche thing that you would have to, kind of open your mind to. The other thing about commercial real estate that is an opportunity for people who are trying to get into it, it's just it's very local. Real estate's kind of a local game, right? Like, stuff about your neighborhood that being from another country, would never know in terms of like the path of growth, where people like to be. And this kind of information, for a local developer or local would-be developer is like worth gold, right? Because information is really the secret sauce in commercial real estate. Where the anchors want to go, where the growth is going, where the new nodes are, where the government is building roads, where the ring road's going. These are basically your signposts, which tell you, if you're an investor, where you want to be.
Great. And then also, you being an investor in Zambia, how have you found the business environment? Has it been easy for you to do business in Zambia?
I think in a funny way, the real estate market here seems pretty mature, especially in commercial real estate. So there have been lots of significant developers that have come in here, like, Atterbury and Navarre and Time Properties and whatnot. And they come because they find it to be a relatively stable place, in terms of a regulatory environment, and rule of law and property rights and all that stuff. There have been a couple of instances since I've been here, because I got here in 2012, where certain statutory instruments would come in suddenly and kind of change the whole landscape and turn things upside down and then get repealed. And things like that are really detrimental to the investment environment, because investors, they need stability, because they're planning out 5 and 7 years, and especially if they're significant investors, developers, then they come with a pack of investors and funds that are relying on a yield or an IRR, and when the government doesn't sort of anticipate the business implications of regulatory changes, it can really mess things up. And I've seen it happen 2 or 3 times. But overall, I would say Zambia is a really good place to do business, and especially now with a very business-minded administration. I will say there's a good feeling in the air in terms of the prognosis for business going forward here.
And moving forward, how do you think we can improve so we attract more investment in the country, whether in real estate or in other, aspects of development?
I would say that Zambia is doing a decent job, just by virtue of creating a climate that is business friendly. I would say that there are incentives that would make Zambia more attractive vis-a-vis other countries. For instance, if you're in hospitality, you have a set of challenges that can be quite daunting. And, in my business, for instance, there's quite a lot of levies, from service charges to hospitality charges and whatnot, and also a very strict environment in terms of hiring and trying to, upgrade your human capital and stuff. And that presents big challenges to groups like ours, because you need a certain amount of flexibility. I come from an environment where you can make quick decisions, you can get rid of people, you're not overtaxed. But there's also a social element to it too. And so I think for the most part the business community, understands that they have to be part of the solution in terms of capacity building and training and job creation and whatnot. But it can't be either or. It has to be kind of, both considerations have to be part of the soup, because there's so much benefits when investors come to a country like this, especially like we employ probably 150 people, and that doesn't even include the construction companies and all the vendors and the people who bring the tomatoes and the onions and whatnot. So you want to attract business, and the last thing I'll say about that is, it's a bit of a beauty contest for offshore investors, isn't it? Because there's a lot of entry points in Africa. Unfortunately, Zambia has always punched above its weight because of its friendliness and its safety and its reliable democracy. But you can always find ways to elbow your way further to the top, and I think this admin is aware of that, and they get that.
All right. And how do we get more local players? Because you mentioned earlier the developers that you listed are all, non-Zambian. How do we get more local players to participate in commercial real estate? Because like I did say, for the most part, most of these malls we have, I don't think any of them are constructed by Zambian developers. How do we get more of these? And how do we then begin to build capacity for them so that they're also able to compete at the same level as international developers like yourselves?
I think that the biggest... Well, first, I'll say that there are a lot of Zambian developers and good ones, right? And I've met a lot of them in the Copper Belt, and they do retail centers and malls and whatnot. So I think the talent is there. I think that the advantage that offshore developers have often, not always, but often, is that they bring fresh resources, fresh investors, people from offshore who want an entry point into the continent because they see the growth potential. I think the biggest problem that local developers have is the capital markets in Zambia. We've done some funding with commercial banks. We've done more funding with pension funds and whatnot. And the capital markets are always the friction point. Project finance is a friction point. And I would say that the capital markets in terms of project finance here are not at the same, they're not at parity with more mature development environments, and I think that disproportionately impacts local developers because this is their reservoir. This is where they need to get the funds from. So that would be the main thing. Funding is always the biggest problem, and in development, people don't go out of business because they build bad buildings. They go out of business because they run out of funds, or they lose control of the timeline and run out of funds. And for developers that find themselves in that situation, what a scramble it is. It's kind of a life or death situation in terms of the project. So I think that's number one. It's capital markets, it's project financing, and it's also coming up with reasonable CPs, in terms of limiting guarantees to the project as opposed to unlimited guarantees, which one bad project can take you out of the game completely.
My final question to you, CJ, is what are the opportunities that are available for locals, either developers or otherwise, when, for example, you're undertaking commercial real estate? For example, you're building a hotel. What opportunities come with those kinds of investments that you undertake? So,
we do a very specific thing, right? And we work at a certain scale. But I'm not a local guy. I'm from America, and I eventually will wind up there. If I was a local developer, there would be so many opportunities that I could highlight, and most of it is driven by the demand generators, right? Like Zambia, strangely, is the most urbanized country in Africa, right? But Africa is urbanizing faster than anywhere on the planet, and there's 1 billion people on the continent. There's not enough housing. All the inventory is old. There's not enough, modern office buildings. There's not enough of everything, and the population is set to double by 2050, which means that in a short 27 years, 2 billion people will be on the continent, which means that 1 in 4 people will live in Africa. And with that much growth and that much headroom, and the fact that most of it is a youth bulge, the average age is 18 and a half years old. As a developer, I would just see that as a long runway of opportunity. And you could You could go out of the primary cities and find your little node, like maybe you're from Suwilanji or Choma or something, and you really know that area. Or you could find a niche that might be self-storage or strategic storage or warehousing. If you need to syndicate, you can put together a group of people, because knowledge is going to give you a seat at the table, especially if you know the market and you know the niche that you want to get into. I think that the best way for Zambians to really get into the development game is to think outside of themselves and start thinking about teams. Like, the only reason I can do what I do here is because of my team, my Zambian team, my local team. You know, we're kind of mixed, but we're mostly Zambians. Look, I use the royal we. We're mostly Zambians. It's all about teams when it comes to commercial real estate, and so anybody who wants to get into it needs to kind of find their team. And the prospects for Zambians who take it seriously are huge. And there's, you know, the great thing about real estate is you don't have to be smart to make a lot of money. You can just get lucky, and a lot of people do. But if you're smart and lucky, you know, sky's the limit.
Thank you so much, CJ. All right, that was a conversation with Christopher Jannou, a hotelier, a real estate developer, and author of the book, The Internationalist, available on Amazon. Business Review will be back just after this.